looking back. You were young and man, you were sad. When you're young, you get sad. When you're young, you get sad. Then you get high. Oh, man. The young gal done you bad, now when it did you wrong. Young gal, you done me bad, so when it did you wrong. And I got high. Lord, I got high. Now you got a bone to pick with me, but I wish you'd let me be. No, one day when you're looking back, you were young and man, you were sad. When you're young, you get sad. When you're young, you get sad. Then you get high. You get high. Ooh, the days of rain would fall your way. Ooh, the days of rain would fall your way. And you'd be high, 'cause you got sad. 'Cause you got sad. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Good morning, everybody. Allow me to just turn that off, and I will change my background screen too. And whilst we're waiting, as you may have guessed, I'm Jamie. I'm really excited and happy that you're all here today. Let me apply that, and let me just spotlight my video. Okay, great. So lovely. Good morning. Really hope you're well excited for the 90 minutes or so. Well, the 87 minutes we've now got together. The video, let me just check that the recording has started before we do anything else. Yeah, okay. So just to give you a heads up on that, the Cardiff team who've asked us to do this work wanted to record it so that what we could do was share this with other people who could benefit from it as well afterwards. To give you some assurance, the breakout groups that we might be in don't get recorded. It's purely this interaction here, and that's probably going to be mostly me talking. If anything, anybody does share anything cataclysmic on here, we can always edit it out afterwards, so don't worry about that. So welcome to this session on creating engaging interactions. The next 87 minutes or so is time for us, an investment in us and a chance to share and learn and improve how we can all kind of increase the power of our interactions. Today I'm going to be sharing some of my perspectives on almost like the foundations of creative engagement, sharing some examples of things that have been tried and tested and worked really well, and sharing some hints and tips that all of us can maybe take away with us as well. A little bit about me, if I may. Before we then get into the kind of content things. So this is me. I'm Jamie Waugh, and I work for an organisation called Miova. And Miova like to develop the confidence and capabilities of people to see and to do things differently. My background, I have 20 so years of experience of working in the NHS. So as you might imagine, 20 years in the public sector, I've experienced my fair share of slightly less than engaging interactions, meetings and workshops. However, about 6 years ago or so, I joined a team, or I created a team along with some colleagues called Together an Active Future, which was, I've realised how many of these I've got to do now, I'm juggling a lot, which was a £10 million Sport England programme that was ultimately about behaviour change of people with regards to physical activity. And a big part of what we wanted to do at the start of that journey was introduce creative engagement and create really meaningful involvement of people. I've been lucky enough to work with this chap here, who has a fantastic name. This is Professor Leon Cruikshank. He is the Professor of Creative Design and Exchange at Imagination Lancaster, and he's also the President of the European Design Agency. And I've had the luxury of being mentored and supported by Leon over the years. So that means that I have really taken on board a lot of his learning in regards to creating meaningful interactions. And to date, I've supported about 583 organisations, maybe about 1,483 people, and spent about 268,798 minutes thinking about this stuff. Some of these numbers are obviously for illustrative purposes only. So that's a little bit about me. And the first thing I'll share is the reason I just did that like that is originally I'd had that on a PowerPoint slide and it proper bored me when I wrote it. And so one of the first things I'd suggest for all of us is if you've just created something that you found a bit boring, bin it off and try and think of a slightly different way that you could present it, just to introduce something that feels a little bit different for people. So that's a little bit about me. So I am going to now share my screen, and this is always the bit now where it gets into the exciting bit of tech working or not. And so let's get this into the right place and present. So I cannot see anybody on the chat other than one person. So I need everybody to give me a thumbs up if they can see this screen. So I can only see one of you. Okay, perfect, thank you. Let me just kind of close that down. So just to give you a sense, we've done the unofficial start now. And as I'm going to click, there we go. So what I would like you to do first, so you've heard a bit about me. We know that we're all here for now the next 85 minutes or so. What I'd like to do very first, please, is I would love you to find a GIF that reflects how you're feeling about the next 85 minutes or so. Hopefully you're all relatively comfortable and au fait with how you put a GIF in the chat. If not, there's some instructions there that hopefully work. And quite simply, think about pause. How am I feeling right now about the next 85 minutes? Find a GIF, post that in the chat, and let's just watch a little bit of a visual representation of where we're all at this morning. And whilst you're doing that, let's enjoy and watch everybody else's as well. I do enjoy watching various things. Bake Off, SpongeBob, Curb Your Enthusiasm, enjoying what's coming through already. And again, you know, I'll keep sharing all the way and I'll talk more about this, but everything we're going to do today is things that you can steal, nick, adapt, edit. And we're going to talk about more about that in a little way. But using a little bit of a connection before content is a really nice way of giving me a sense of where everybody's at. So let me go back to sharing my screen once more, and we'll move on to the next activity that I would love you to do. Okay, so thumbs up again. I can't keep doing this. I'm just going to assume it works now. And if it doesn't work, somebody unmute and shout at me that you're not seeing what we need to see. Otherwise, you're going to keep doing this about 40 times through the session. So we've heard a bit about me. We've heard a bit about how you are. And now it would be lovely to understand a little bit more about who you are. And as you can see there, what I'm going to do, and this is the bit where it gets really scary because I have to use the power of Teams tech. And we all know that feeling when you're going to do it, is it going to work or not? But hopefully what you have done, as per the instructions in my email and on the informal start that we did, is you've got some kind of background image. I can see loads of you that have that's absolutely beautiful. And if you haven't been able to do that, because sometimes your IT tech might not allow it, you have an image to mind or to phone that you could use as a way of introducing yourself to some people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in a breakout group for 3 minutes, because remember today the power of 3 is going to be present throughout. And quite simply, okay, everyone's joining back. This is working. Lovely. So let me close that. Okay, welcome back, everybody. What we just did there was a little chance to connect, share a little bit. Just give me a sense of, did that work? Did you actually end up in a breakout room with other people and you spoke?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And so there's that first bit again of creative engagement. You can put in all the planning that you want, and when the tech just makes it a little bit harder for you, remain calm, recognize that people are lovely and will be patient with what you need to do, and eventually you will always get there. Fabulous. So thank you for that. Welcome back. I'm going to now get into the content now that we've connected, and allow me to share my screen again. So just to explain today, that well, I'm going to talk about the constraints a little bit, but so let's start with, okay, so let's click. There we go. So today I'm going to use the framework of the letter C. You should be seeing a slide, so I'm going to assume you
Jamie?
have. Oh, sorry, go on.
Jamie, there's a few people that have said that they've been kicked out of the meeting and can't get in. So they're putting on the
Okay.
chat, I've been kicked out. I can't get back in, which was possibly one of my troubles. There's 4 or 5 of them.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. Like I said, I think other than just coming and rejoining, let's see if people are rejoining. View the lobby, admit all. Okay, that looks better. Lots more numbers. Okay. Fabulous. So hopefully everybody who was struggling to admit all. Okay.
Nice. Seems interesting.
There we go. So hopefully that is now everybody back in the room who needs to be. Thank you for letting me know, Alex. That's really helpful. And already we're learning a little bit, aren't we, about the use of Teams and technology and the fun of that. And already I'm thinking I'm going to bin off one of the breakout activities I was going to do based on what we're learning together now. So can you still see the slide that I had up? Yep, perfect. Thank you. So, as I said, today I'm going to use the framework of the letters C and the number 3 to structure the content we're going to get into, and I'm going to tell you why later on. The reality check for today. So I had 2 choices. I could either choose to share activities, just like lots of fun stuff that you could just nick and go and do yourself, or I could choose to just talk about the fundamentals of creative engagement and the things that need to underpin anything else to have a really great chance of success. But then I remembered that today's number was the number 3. And so I added a third choice, which was, let's see if we can do both. I want to talk a little bit about the constraints of today. And again, I'll explain why in a sec. So some of the constraints for me, particularly today, are I can't listen to each of your realities and examples and help you explore those. I can't take questions from individuals because there's lots of you, and I've got to think about the whole audience together. I don't know if the thing that you are thinking about is an interaction, is a meeting, a workshop, a big event. I don't know if it's in person or virtual. And so again, I've got to think about how we can do something that has potential value to all of those things. I also don't know your confidence level or experience in doing kind of facilitative creative design and exchange. And I have 90 minutes to try and cover everything. I could spend 90 minutes just on designing the first perfect 3 minutes of an event, let alone try and cover everything. However, all of those things are not a negative. What they are is a constraint, because constraint can inspire creativity. And we're going to touch on that as one of our big C's later on. But often when you are constrained by a thing, it forces you to think differently and more carefully about what it is you could do. And so hopefully what I've created today is something that is going to work for you in whatever context you have. However, a couple of things I want to talk about that. So I asked you at the start to write down an intention and hopefully display that somewhere, with the idea being of too few of us are intentional when we attend meetings or design interactions for things. And just by framing what our intention is, it helps us have a clear focus and a purpose of what we're going to do. And so what I flagged here is I have an intention today, and my intention is to ensure that you all leave with something new or different that can improve the power of your interaction design and delivery. Now, everything we're going to share today is can be stolen, can be refined, and can be changed. And this brings me on to adding an intentional role for you guys as well, which is
Like a workshop on like intention and designing.
work out. Your role is to work out how whatever I'm sharing today can be taken, tweaked, or changed to apply in your context. I can't do that for you. So today you need to do the work to make it work. So I see quite often people leave saying, I'm not sure what I got from that particular thing or this particular thing, or that didn't have relevance to my context. And the key bit here is we're probably going to take 50 or 60 different ideas and things today we can learn. And the work has to be done to put it into your context. And so that's my encouragement to you for your intention. Okay. So this question kind of matters to everything else that follows. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask you to think about it. And I'm going to leave literally space of about 30 seconds now. I'd like you to think about this question and whether you hold that in your mind or write down an answer. Let's just take 30 seconds to think about that. And then I'll share what I believe to be the main intention. Okay, thank you. So, firstly, I wonder how many of us felt comfortable with about 30 seconds of silence and thinking time. And another thing we're going to touch on today, and it's worth kind of thinking about now, is how much time are we building into our design to allow somebody to actually think about a thing that we've asked them? Most humans generally struggle to have the right or the accurate response when they're kind of put on the spot in terms of a question, and yet we design that all of the time. And so quite simply, that's about introducing a little pause for thought into your design and facilitation that allows people to think. So I'm going to share what I believe to be the main intention. There's no right or wrong answers to this. But if I was asked this question, my answer would be the facilitator's role is to create the conditions that make it easier for people to contribute meaningfully. And again, hold that thought of meaningfully. I'm going to work on the assumption that we all actually want our interactions to have meaningful contribution and engagement. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. And we're probably less interested in how do I deliver information to people that they can passively receive and just accept. So on that basis, if we work on the basis of this is what the vast majority of what we're going to talk about today is going to be about achieving, I'm going to pose one more question. Why bother? Now, I don't need to pause on this one too much. And I'm hoping very much that because you're here today, that you already kind of feel like it is worth bothering with. But to share some kind of thoughts based on my experiences of doing this in the past and looking into a lot of the research in this, generally a lot of us, and maybe it's endemic across an awful lot of the cultures and workspaces that I've been involved in, feel bored by meetings and uninspired by the workshops that happen because the conditions haven't been created that allow us to contribute. We create spaces for people to come together, people with amazing brains and great experiences and their own thoughts and ideas and perspectives. And then we pack an agenda so full that there's zero time for actual discussion and problem solving. We seem to prioritize update sharing and progress so that people just become passive recipients, which to me is an absolute waste of brain power and expertise and value. And it kind of feels like we're missing out on ideas and perspectives that could fundamentally change things. As humans, the evidence shows that we derive pleasure and meaning when we feel like we've been of value and we feel like we've mattered to something and been able to make a difference. And so this question is then one I would like you to keep in mind from going forwards in terms of your design. So it's not one for now almost, but if you're going to write down when I'm thinking about what I'm going to be designing, where have I designed in the opportunities for people to share meaningfully? Okay, so we're going to move on and we're going to get into some kind of literal kind of ideas of of what we can start to do. I generally perceive things in terms of how I work in, if you put in about 80% of effort into your design, allow about 20% for really effective delivery, you're going to get 100% better outcomes. Obviously, the 80-20 principle kind of works. I've just adapted that in what, in my experience, suggests works really, really well. So we're going to talk about planning and design. And so if we continue with the assumption that we all believe it's right to create the space for people to contribute meaningfully, then I think it would be good for us to add a second intention into what we're going to do, which is how do we design out the barriers to a person's engagement? So there are many, many barriers. I'm going to stop sharing here, and then I'm going to test out whether or not it's a good idea to put you back into breakout spaces. Let's find out. We're going to have one more go with this, and if it works well, we're okay for the rest of the session. If not, we're going to adapt how we do it. So if you perceive an awful lot of barriers exist to somebody's engagement, we want people to engage meaningfully and feel that they can do, but there are an awful lot of barriers in terms of design and delivery that make that harder for people. And so what I would like you to do is firstly ask yourself, what do I know about my audience and what their barriers to engagement could be? Now I'm going to put you into a breakout group and you're going to play a game of Snap. So the game of Snap is this. For the first minute, I want you to write down as many of the barriers that you could perceive your audience that would make it harder for them to contribute meaningfully. Then after 1 minute, and it would be great if somebody could time that for you in your group, I would then like the first person to read out one of theirs. And if anybody in your group also has that, they're going to say snap. And then you're going to move on to the next one. Somebody else is going to read one. And if anybody else has it, you're going to get snap. And the idea of snap as an activity is firstly allows thinking space for people to actually about what do I think? You then start to recognize what everybody starts to recognize as a barrier. So commonly we all understand and see this. And you might also learn something new from somebody else that's unique that you hadn't thought of. And so Snap's a really great way of sharing your own ideas, identifying something that is commonly known by people that definitely needs attention, and maybe sharing something unique that you might not have thought of before. So we're going to try this again. Fingers crossed it's a bit better smooth than last time. Snap, 1 minute on your own. Somebody time it, please. Then the next 2 minutes sharing and snapping, and then I'll bring you all back. Let's see. Did that work? Everybody was in a room? Everybody played some Snap. Yeah. Well, at least as much as you could with the 3 minutes kind of timing that I give you. Brilliant, thank you. So, as you might expect, we're not going to ask people to share anything back, but potentially you heard or shared something of interest then. So, let me run through a few that I could kind of perceive of that are common, really common. And always keep these two things in mind. So, all the way through, if you're thinking of what is a question I can ask myself in design that makes it more likely I design something for people to really value, you can ask yourself of where have I designed for contribution? And have I perceived as some barriers on behalf of my audience that I can design out? So I don't know what the event is about. Poor directions to the new place. So I turn up late. There's no parking. I'm stressed. I walk in. I'm pretty frazzled. I've joined online or I've walked into a room and it's silent and I feel weird and awkward and I've started to retreat into my own body. I've sat on a table and everyone's a stranger and I have to make small talk and I hate small talk. I hear the word icebreaker, it makes me want to die a little bit on the inside. I've forgotten the names of the people I'm sat on the table with and I'm embarrassed because they told me their name 3 minutes ago, but I've totally forgotten. And now I have to pretend to not want to use a name for the rest of this. I've just sat down, the first 20 minutes and 20 slides, I've just received information, I've sat back, I've folded my arms, you've lost me, good luck getting me back. They ask each table to share something to a room full of people, and I hate public speaking, it makes me want to curl up again. I've been sat down for ages, I haven't moved, I'm bored, I'm sweaty. I've got PowerPoint slides I can't see, I don't know why we're here, I don't know what we've achieved. So all of those things, I could see smiles from people at various points because we've all experienced that. And it is our role to perceive them on behalf of people and design those things out. And a lot of what we're going to touch on today is going to try and do exactly that. So we're going to move it on. So let me get back to sharing. If anybody, by the way, wants to share thoughts, ideas, or whatever in the chat, please feel free to do so. I won't be seeing them and I won't be able to kind of comment on them, but that doesn't stop you sharing if you would like to. So let me bring this back to where we could get to. Okay, so let me get into present mode. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So we're now into the letter C. You remember that we said we're going to set the tone, and today's letter is the letter C in true Sesame Street style. Hopefully a bit of nostalgia for those of you who are old enough to remember that. So some of the things I'm going to share today are going to make you go, obviously, Jamie, common sense. And I'm going to make the argument that people tell me things are common sense all the time. And then when I ask them some really simple questions, they generally go, well, no, I hadn't thought about that, or I haven't done that. So anything today that's common sense does not mean common practice. And so some of this stuff is going to be really basic, some less so. So the first C is create a considered plan. And I've broken this down, as you might expect, into 3 elements. So the first one, logistics matter. Now, this is basic and common sense. But here's some really simple things. If you give yourself a little bit that says, when is it and what time is it? You can firstly sense check. Does that date clash with anything that's really important for this audience? So I'm not going to get a great audience. Is it a little bit close to school time, close or finish, and so people are going to have to leave? Is it across lunch, so I have to provide lunch? Does it clash with anything that's going to become an issue for me? That is simple, worth a sense check. People, what do I know? How many people have I got in this space? The way you would design an interaction for 10 people is fundamentally different for 100 people. How many of us have had the experience of there's been about 15 or 20 people and they say, right, we're going to start with a round of introductions. And 15 minutes later, you're still doing the round of introductions because you haven't given thought to the time that I've got and the amount of people in this space. Venue info. What do I know about the space that I have? So this example that you're looking at is a real example. You don't need to worry about it too much. But I like to know personally, is it a room? Can I move stuff about? Have I got wall space? What's the screen like? If the screen is tiny, don't design everything based on a presentation that people can't see. If it's gloomy and you're looking for something a little bit more enthusiastic, do they have some outdoor space that I can use? Other things that I might know about. So I'm rushing through this a little bit. Common sense, I get it. But if you just pause and ask yourself some simple questions about the logistics. How many people? What's my venue like? When is it? Is there anything else that I need to know that makes a difference to what I need to design? You'll already be getting one up on an awful lot of other things that get designed and happen. So the next one in our letter C. In fact, I'm going to go back and I'm going to stop sharing again. I'm going to ask us to do an activity that I learned last week. So this is the bit where today I'm going to try some things I've not done before because I like to develop and take some risks too. I'm going to ask you all to do it with me. If you're in a shared office space, feel free to not, but it would be cool if you did. And you're probably the person having the most fun in that office anyway if you did it. But just to reassure you, nothing to be worried about. It's dead easy. And we're all going to do it together as a collective. So what I would like to do, and you may have done this before, I'd like to take your finger and I would like you to point it up in the air. And I would like you to look up and start rotating your finger clockwise. Keep watching it and keep rotating clockwise. And then lower your hand down. Keep it moving in the same direction. Keep moving it. And then when it gets below your eye line, look down. What direction is it moving in? So yesterday I did this for somebody. Oh, somebody just went, oh, hang on. So what you probably noticed is it felt like you were doing clockwise, and then down here suddenly it was anti-clockwise. What the hell just happened? So what just happened was your brain didn't trick you. You didn't change direction. Your perspective changed. And if you can keep in mind this simple thing of how can I view things from this perspective, which is mine, and from this perspective, which is somebody else's, it's a really nice way of remembering that you should design for your audience, not for you. I love the fact that some of you are still doing this and are still trying to work out what the hell just happened. It's witchcraft, I appreciate. Keep trying it. It will happen the same every single time. I tried it with a colleague yesterday. Then I realized they didn't know what clockwise was, and so it stopped working immediately. So let me bring back to the screen, and I would like you to keep that in mind. Now, again, anything we're doing today, steal it, use it. So the reason I've shared that one, as my lights have just gone off, that's interesting, is this. I love to think about, and my starting point once I've done logistics is always, what success factors or value can I design in my interaction that aren't just mine, but are also for my audience? And that's why I did this. because we design often for our own perspective, but it's really easy to just increase how engaging and of value your audience can find something if you think in terms of their perspective at least a little bit. So success factors are great. It's surprising how few people have success factors when they design something. When you ask the question, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What's a really great outcome for you? And then the next level question is, what's a really great outcome for the participants in that room? If possible, always try and find a way of understanding a great outcome for your participants. There's two ways of doing that. One, you might know them really well, in which case you can probably make a decent assumption about what their success factor might be. Another way of doing it, which works really nicely if you can, is you can try and ask them. So before an event, you could create a poll or a Slido or a word cloud or anything else where people can interact and say, share one thing that you would get, that you would see as a value for this session. What is one thing we could do today that would mean you would leave feeling happy? And then it's really easy because people generally don't want much. It's really easy to think, how can I then tweak my plan to provide value for all? So again, I could spend 90 minutes just on success factors, but we're not going to. But remember that, and maybe it will help you just think a little bit more about the audience you're involving. And then the last thing, and I love this kind of phrase, and so this is one I'd really encourage you to think about strongly. This is literally a picture of the plan that I've done for today. However you plan is down to you. I'm not going to tell you how you should plan. You should plan in a way that works for you. You should plan. That's the only thing I'm going to say. If you have 10 minutes to think of a plan, that's better than no plan. But do a plan in your way. But generally, always look at your plan and say, where have I found time to design in for contribution and not consumption? I generally never start a plan with, what can I do today that's wacky and fun? Because that's generally not going to be conducive to the outcomes. It's always, what's the logistics? What are the success factors? And then how do I design to deliver those success factors? And then when can I introduce something that is interactive and engaging for people that helps me deliver that? And so, to sum up the create, consider, plan, first C's, logistics matter. How can I think of a great outcome for me and a great outcome for my audience? And I'm just going to do that forever now whenever I talk about this. And where in my plan have I designed for contribution and not consumption? So we're going to move on. That's the first C. And all of this will be wrapped up at the end. I'm going to share everything that we've done today afterwards as well. So connection before content is the next C. And again, this is absolutely vital in terms of really successful interactions. So the general idea of this is that as human beings, we need to find connection and build a little bit of trust and relationships when we need to feel like we can share something and be involved. So where we want people to feel involved and a bit welcomed, we need to find time to create an opportunity for them to connect with somebody else before we get into the content. A few things based on an awful lot of research and learning is everybody communicates and listens better with people they know a little bit more about. A lot of people are actually quite introverted and find it hard to speak up and share ideas. Maybe it's a British thing, I don't know. Maybe it's different if you do this in America or someplace like that, I don't know. But a lot of us are introverted, and so we find it hard to share things, especially when we don't know people very well. And there's a lot of evidence that shows when people speak sooner in an interaction, they are far more likely to continue to share for the rest of the interaction. And I'll share that thought I said to you before. I imagine you've all done it and seen it, and I can't see you, but maybe some of you are doing it now already, I don't know. But that thing of when you haven't had a chance to contribute to something, after about 5 minutes, your arms get folded. After about 7 minutes, you start to sit back. After about 8-9 minutes, you're done. And it's really hard then to bring you back into that space. And so we need to find a connection before content way of doing this. No matter how long you've got, 1 minute, 3 minutes. You did one at the start of this today that was relatively short. So I'm going to give you 4 rules for connection before content that make it really easy to do. So connection before content, just see it as an activity that we do that helps people connect and build trust in some way before we launch into the main contact. So 4 things to remember. It should be easy to explain. So easy to explain. You think about what you did at the start. I would like you to say your first name. I'd like to share your role and share something about that background image. That was really easy to explain. It honors choice. Now, this one is, if you think about choice being honored for everything we're going to talk about today, it really matters that you allow me to share in a way that I'm comfortable with, not in a way that you've directed me to. So honoring choice is massive. People generally can't come back to that example before of, I would like you to stand up and you're going to share with the group. That is not playing to my level of comfort. I'm getting no choice in that. So if you're always saying to people, share as much as you are happy to do. It would be lovely if you could share something. Doesn't matter if it's small, doesn't matter if it's big, anything that feels like it's something you're willing to share. Let people know it's a safe space to share this kind of thing. One thing I like to do, and I'll come on to this a little bit, is I generally always go first. And I usually pick something that makes them realize we're not looking for anything groundbreaking here. It's something simple that you'd be willing to share with people. 3, obviously, encourage a connection. Personal, professional, relational, experiential, whatever it is, people are connecting. When people connect, you've seen it. You smile. You find a point of commonality you never knew existed. It gets rid of the differences and helps us realize we're all humans and we're all in this together. And then ideally, a bit of fun. Now, fun doesn't have to be wacky out there. Let's put on a funny hat and pretend to be a different character. Most people will start to do that thing that I've shown you already a few times today if you do that. But fun can just be sharing something that warms our heart a little bit. Sharing something that we love to do that people might not know. It might be getting up and moving about and interacting too. So those are the kind of 4 ideas of connection before content. I'm going to share 3. I was going to put you into breakout groups for this, and I wish I could, but I'm conscious that I'm already... Oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it anyway. I don't care. Well, I do care. I'll find the time somewhere else. So, if you remember in the video that I shared, if you watched it, I said that I would explain how you can use a 10p coin to create a connection with people. So a 10p coin, hopefully you've got a coin on you. If not, a coin looks like this. It has the Queen's head, it has a name, it has dates, it has some letters, it has a design on it. What I'm going to ask you to do, yeah, we're going to go for it in your breakout groups. I'm going to do it. I would like you to think of ideas that you might have for a connection activity that uses a coin. Okay, it doesn't matter if in your group you come up with nothing or you come up with some absolute nonsense. You're not going to have to share it when you come back. It can be teeny, it can be groundbreaking. It's okay, whatever works for you. So you have a coin. How can you use a coin for a connection activity? I'm going to actually change this one to be 2 minutes to get myself 1 minute back because that might be all the difference at the end. So coin, if you've got one to hand, use it. What connection activity could you come up with in your group that uses a coin? Right, okay. Frustratingly, it's not going to allow me to do that. So I'm going to give you instead, here's where you adapt as facilitator. Instead, I'm going to give you 1 minute as an individual to think of a connection activity you could do with a coin. Feel free to turn your screen off if you'd like so people don't watch you through the browser, you try and work something out. And then I would love you to pop in the chat anything that you came up with. So I'll give you 1 minute, pop it in the chat, connection activity with a coin. Okay, brilliant. I'll bring you back in the room. I mean, you saw me smiling as some of them was going through. There's already loads of fantastic stuff in here, which is why I also created the Padlet for you guys to contribute to before and hopefully afterwards, which is we between us have amazing experiences that we can bring into this space. Loads of these would work really well, and there's a really nice mixture of some of these are just for fun, and that's okay. And some of these can have connections and analogies that we could use. And sorry, and I also just noticed in the chat that somebody said their finger didn't go a different direction. I'll have to speak to that person afterwards and work out what's different because I don't know how that works. So what we did, and somebody actually, one of you already kind of got it in the space, is I have a bag of coins, and that bag of coins have various denominations, lots of different years. And you ask people to take a coin out of the bag, and you ask them to find the year on that coin. And you simply ask them to share something that you were doing in that year, personal or professional, that you are happy to share with the group. And it's as simple as that. And every single time I've done this, regardless of if you're in a team who you've known for years or a team that you don't know particularly well, you find out something new with somebody every single time. And you start to find that people connect. Oh, I never knew you were in a college band. That's amazing. Oh, wow, I've been on that holiday too. I absolutely loved it. I never knew you had that job before. That's fascinating. You can also talk about honouring choice. You can also remove some of the tension of that by saying, if you can't think of anything for that 1 year because you've got a duff year, be creative, pick the year before, pick the year after. There's no real pressure. The idea of this is that we're sharing something that connects with people. So that's how you can use a coin to create a connection activity. And some of what you guys have shared in there, all of what you've shared in there is also super cool. I'm going to share, well, we jumped up to that one. Let me just get back down to the client. There we go. Put that back into share mode. Okay, so it should be able to see the slide again. So I'll share two more. We've done the coin one. One I've done really nicely that I like is called Every Day is a School Day. So some of these have different reasons. The coin game is really great for people who maybe don't know lots about each other but know a bit, where you're just basically wanting people to start to find connections and build a bit of trust. Every Day is a School Day is something that works really nicely when you want people to think about, we're all here today to learn something new and think of different perspectives and stuff. So what that one was is basically I got everybody up into the middle of a room and asked them about something big or small that they had learnt recently that they think other people might not know. Again, thinking about the kind of 4 rules, easy to explain, honest choice, you can share something, you cannot share something, reason of connection, which I'll talk about. So the idea is if you've got a thing, we all group together, you ask for a volunteer, the volunteer goes over to a different part of the room and they share something that they've learned recently that other people might not know. When they've shared it, the group, if anybody has just learned that as well, they then go and stand with that person. If everybody already knew it, they don't move. So this works for a few reasons. So firstly, it's quite fun to watch an entire herd of people move across a room together because they've all just learned something new. And actually, that's quite life affirming for the person who shared it too. It's equally funny when nobody moves, despite the fact that somebody's really admitting, I didn't know something that everybody else in the world knew. And also what it is it encourages movement. And anytime you can encourage movement in a space, you're already getting people open and expressive. And then you can use the analogy that when we are here in a space with people and we create the time, it gives us a chance to share something that other people might not know. So we've added value to their lives. And maybe if we just listen, we can all accept that we can also learn from other people that enriches our lives too. And then the last one I'm going to touch on, most likely to, really simple. You saw those mini whiteboards I had. It works great for this type of thing, but anything that you would want to do, you could use. Basically, this is really nice for when you've got a really great team and you want to celebrate the culture and the people within your team. So you basically create some pre-considered questions of who is most likely to be the person who arranges the team birthdays. And everybody writes down the name and they turn it around and you get a point if you're part of the majority and you get nothing if you're not. Who is most likely to steal the last piece of cake and not admit to it? Who is most likely to be the person who we all turn to when we're upset and can give us a thing? This type of thing is really beautiful for creating a team connection and letting people know that they are valued for the things that they do. And because you can write the questions, you can make sure that everybody is getting some form of value from that. So those are 3 really simple connection before content activities. As we said, there's 4 rules to it. There's 3 different things you can do, but the idea generally is create a connection before you get into the content. The extra, there's a 5th, not rule, but it's even better if you can connect your activity to the rest of the content that you've got for the rest of the day. Okay, so let me see, 10:23, where's my plan? We're going to have a little 1 minute brain break, not a 3 minute brain break, for reasons of timing and technology. So literally, what I would like you to do is switch your screen off, and you're gonna have a minute. You can use that minute however you would like to. You can stand up. I encourage you to stand up. You could have a stretch. You could write down something that's connected with you so far. You could pop something in the chat that's a question. Use a minute however you would like to. It starts now. I'll bring you all back. Off you go. Smashing, I'll invite you back in, please. This is when we notice people who figured that 1 minute was long enough to make a brew, and they were sorely mistaken, and now they're trying to leg it back in time. On the slide, it said 3 minutes, and you're like, brilliant, I can use a comfort break, I can make a brew. And then he told me it was 1, and then he ruined it. So I'm going to get us back into the sharing and the assumption that you're all about to click back on now. And again, just to explain things as we go along, and again, some of this common sense, not common practice. It is rare that I see anybody run an event or a workshop or anything else where they introduce a little bit of a let's pause, let's reflect, let's have a stand up, let's have a stretch. Because we're all so fast, we're all sticking to such a big agenda all the time. There is zero space given to that. But it matters. As humans, we need that little brain break. We need just a little chance maybe to capture a thought or a note. So let me get back into sharing mode again. Okay. So now we're going to get into the main bulk. So we've done our planning. We've created considered plans. We have done connection before content. And we're now getting to the third of our C's, which is the actual creative content bit. Now, the main content of the session is obviously where there are lots of opportunities to be creative. I'd encourage you guys to check out the Padlet that you've all been contributing to, because there's loads of great ideas on there already. Now, I've split this into 3, obviously, the theme of the day. The first bit, the main bit, the final bit. And I'm going to do these at a bit of a whistle-stop tour. And again, if some of this doesn't work, it's fine. You can ignore it. If some of it doesn't work for you, you can take it and you can change it. If all of this is great, good luck trying to write down the 50 things that we've talked about today. So, things you can do in the first bit. And the first bit I probably mean before you get into the main topic. So, and again, common sense. So, background music. Hopefully you all heard some form of tune when you joined today. That was surprisingly hard to set up. In the end, I had to play my phone on top of my laptop because doing it through Teams was an issue. So, walking into that space, think about what we said before, designing out the barriers. Silence is awkward. What can I do in terms of ambient music? We've recently tried in Miova, birdsong in the background. Again, quite a lot of research that people's well-being is enriched a little bit when they hear the sounds of nature. And so even if it's a bit quirky and different, we've tried birdsong in the background at events recently, which seemingly has worked quite well. So just getting past that barrier of silence when you walk into a space. So the unofficial start. There's a few things I'm going to draw out here. So, and this can obviously work virtually or in person. A welcome board when you walk in with some instructions is a really great way of doing an unofficial start. Hello, lovely to see you. Help yourself to a brew. Stick a name sticker on. I'm going to come back to the name stickers because there's an activity there in itself. And maybe scan this QR code and let us know how you're feeling today. A little bit like what we did today. All of those things. An unofficial start is really helpful for a few reasons. It's a great way of gaining insight. It's a great way of making people feel relaxed. It gets past that thing of people come in not quite sure what to do and then just sit down and get the laptops out. And it's also a helpful way to gain a bit of insight. Can we use a Miro or a Slido or even like a physical thing on a wall? Go and stick something up there that you would like to kind of get from today. An unofficial start is really helpful in lots of ways. I want to talk about the sticker thing because actually I've made an entire I could do 90 minutes on just name stickers. So what do we all recognize when people use name stickers at events? They usually use the teeny name stickers that go here that people use to write a biro on. And so there's zero way that you can see that. We talked before about a barrier being, I've forgotten your name and now I'm embarrassed. And so one thing that we do quite a lot of, we have big name stickers and we have huge chunky markers. And you simply ask people to put their first name on there. What that does, firstly, I'm sat on a table, I can see who I'm sat with, I don't have the embarrassment of forgetting a name, I'm feeling more relaxed, I'm more willing to engage and contribute on my table. Everything we're doing is designing out a barrier so people can contribute meaningfully. However, you can use a large name sticker as a connection activity. You could ask people to put their first name on it and think of something that relates to your content. My thing in Together in Active Future is physical activity. And so you might say, write down a thing that you used to love doing when you were a kid in terms of being active. And so you might say Jamie Manhunt, for example. And then to turn that into an activity at the start of your session, you can ask people to stand up and we're going to go and find a partner and you're going to simply introduce yourself and then you're going to share about the thing that you used to love doing as you were a child. So already you've got people up, you've got them moving, you've got them talking, and you've got them sharing something which gets past the barrier of small talk and not knowing what to say. So that's something as simple as that is doing a lot of work for us in terms of the barriers. What's nice that I've just started to try recently is another barrier is when you say to people, find a partner, they either just turn to the person next to them who they always know, or they put their head down and retreat a little bit, and then suddenly they're not going to have a partner. A really nice, easy way you can get past that is by giving them a reason to pair up with people. So you could literally say, right, everybody stand up. I would like you to pair up with somebody who you can use colour, somebody who has the same colour top as you do, somebody who has the same colour hair. You could do it on dates. You could say, I'd like to pair up with somebody who shares your birthday season, spring, summer, autumn, winter. That's quite nice because you have to go up to people and say, hi, are you spring? No, I'm August. Okay, see you later then, and moving on. A really nice one you could do is you could ask people to do numbers behind their back. And when you bring it out, however many numbers you've got, 1 to 3, go and find somebody who also has that number. And so then you've got people up in a room holding up fingers and these kind of signs, and then you find a reason to connect. So the first bit, which we're not going to do any more on now, is find that kind of background music. Does that remove the barrier of people's first thing of walking in? Find a way of gaining some insight if you can, or getting something from them in that first space. And then use our connection before content ideas and activities to get people moving and talking. The main bit. So lots of things here, and as you might appreciate, we're not going to go into these in great detail. One thing we've already done is introducing pause for thoughts is really, really helpful. Now that can be literally, if you've got a slide deck and you have a lot of slides, and sometimes you need to, like I do today, you could introduce a holding slide after the third slide that says pause. Think about something you've heard in the last 3 slides that has connected or has raised a question or a doubt for you. Write that down and capture it and stick it in mind, or go and stick it on a wall. And again, you're introducing that movement, you're giving people a chance to actually think about something. And by doing something like putting stickers on a wall, writing it down, you're allowing people to share in a way that works for them. Too often, as you'll seen, when you're on a table with somebody who's quite dominating, they'll be the person who generally shares the thoughts on behalf of that table. So something as simple as that is a great way of getting people moving, sharing it in their way, honouring their choice, but still getting insight from them. Quotes, images. So again, simplistically, I had a quote at the start of this, which was about having videos on, because actually that's a real nice way of me knowing that people care and want to give attention. And that was that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. You can use quotes and images generally to make points that don't have to be bullet points on PowerPoint slides. You can use quotes and images on walls to kind of represent a point that you want to get across. Really simplistically, if you're unsure, you can use things like ChatGPT and say, what quotes by specific women from this century or from this particular country best represent this point, and use kind of ChatGPT to make it easier for you so you're not constantly scrolling through Google and things like that. So those kind of really simple things are something that we can all do that just add a little bit of difference. I'm going to touch on analogies quite quickly, but analogies are amazing, particularly if you really push and stretch them. So one analogy we did today was this analogy, with the idea of we experience the thing and then we use the thing to make the point that we need to see from a different perspective. And so I'll share a couple that we've done before. And again, you can use these or just come up with your own or find others. So we've used handheld mazes in Together Active Future before. And in Miova, we've used also kind of drawn mazes. So a really simple thing you could do is you could pair people up in the way that we've talked about, and you could ask them to do an individual maze on their own first. Then you can ask them to pair up, and one of them has the pen and the other one has to describe to them which way they need to move because they have their eyes shut. And then what you ask them to do is you ask them to find the analogy from this for their work. So analogies are amazing because people do the work for you and they learn by doing. And if they've learned by doing, that's stronger than you telling them. I've noticed that somebody shared on the Padlet something that some of you experienced with Ken Masson, my colleague, where he got you all outside moving around and walking and certain distances from each other. And all Ken did was, what analogies can we draw from today that relate to systems and networks? And all of you created the content for those analogies. So things like a maze is really great. We've also used balance boards where you ask people to balance, and then you start giving them more things and they keep getting more and more things handed to them as an analogy for how we all take on too much, and sometimes you need to ask for help, or sometimes you need to put some things down, and eventually if you take on too much, you're going to fall over. Analogies are really great. A maze, a balance board, asking people to move around, really strong in a way of helping people experience it. The Creative Engagement Toolkit, I'm going to share with you afterwards a resource that you can literally steal from, that was created by me, but again with lots of colleagues' input. That if you're unsure of, I just want some activities, Jamie, and you're giving me a bit too theory or too many principles or whatever here, it's literally about a 40-page document that has, and I'll show you a few images in a minute, that has activities that you can do for great warm-ups, activities that you can do during your content. So we talked about the snap thing, how you can use voting grids, target control, which is a really amazing activity when people feel like they're not in control of something, and how they can reframe that thinking. I'll show you some images of the toolkit later, but I'm going to share that as a resource for you, and everything is hyperlinked. But that's just, if you just want to find some activities and work out how to adapt them in your setting, that's great. And then movement. We've talked a lot about movement. So again, lots of the research shows that when people are, let's talk about in this space. Literally, the environment that we create in terms of meetings and workshops, events, is almost the worst possible environment that we could create for creativity. Sat down, things in front of us, barriers between us, no movement space, no time for thinking. It literally is the environment we can create. Funnily enough, the best environments for creative thinking are when you're in the shower, when you're having a comfort break in the bathroom. Now, I appreciate you can't design something where people are going to kind of interact in bathrooms or whatever it would be. But what you can do is work out how to get people up and moving about, how you can maybe encourage a little bit of space in the fresh air. Brains need a break to be able to process what they've heard and be able to generate what it actually thinks about a thing. And so this environment of being sat down is the worst environment for creativity. So find a way to build in movement. When people move in, move over here, we're going to put something up on a wall about us, what connected with you today. I'd like you to pair up. And in your pairs, I'd like you to probe this powerful question. Go for a walk outside, come back in 10 minutes, then share what you think. Find ways of getting, even just halfway through, stand up, have a stretch, have a move about, and then return. Movement's really important in terms of creating the conditions for your brains to work effectively. And then one more thing in the final bit. Commitment devices. So if any of you have read James Clear Atomic Habits, pretty cool book, and talks a lot about a commitment device is something that you can design in that means that you are more likely to do the thing that you want to commit to doing. So you could literally in your event ask people to make a commitment to something they're going to do, and then find something they could do right now that would lock that in so it's going to happen. So rather than just say, oh, me and Tom are going to have a meeting, you can encourage them to actually get out your calendars, get out your phones, arrange the meeting now, send it to each other. It's more likely to happen. So what I've thought about this week, which I've never really put in these terms before, so I'm going to test it out now. If you need to do something in the final bit, so usually the final bit's rushed, isn't it? We kind of run out of time and then we do a quick wrap up. Final part of any event should have some reflection, should have some action, and it should have some celebration or appreciation. And if you think of those three things and build those into an ending of an event, you're guaranteed to end on a bit of a high. So the commitment device is the action bit. What's a thing that we can agree to do right now that means it's going to happen? Can we get out a meeting and arrange it now? Can I tweet to say our organization is now going to do this thing? Can I contact the person who looks after the agendas and say, on the next agenda, we're going to focus on this? Because all of those things mean change is more likely to happen. The wall of awesomeness is really great for reflection. So a wall of awesomeness is, like we did with our Padlet, what has connected with you today? I would like you to write down an idea or an activity that you've really engaged with, write it down, put your name against it, and then go and stick it on the wall of awesomeness. And then what you're doing is creating a visual representation of the success and power of your interaction in an event, and you're getting a feel for people of what's really worked for them. And it's a nice visual. One thing you can also do with walls of awesomeness is if you wanted to, you could also then take all the content off that, digitize it and feed it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to generate a summary of the things that have connected today, or give me a report write-up of what everybody has kind of talked about and shared that I can then send out with all of my participants. So a wall of awesomeness, it's doing a lot. I'm getting a chance to share in my way. I'm getting a chance to move. I'm creating a visual representation of something that's really good. I'm getting a chance to analyze what people think. I'm getting something that I can share with people afterwards. That works virtually and in person. And then one more thing, ending on a high. Again, this is a really nice thing to do if you're really looking for those kind of emotional connections as people leave. The one thing I've done that's really nice is and again, you need to think about the size of your group. So if it's a small group, this works for everyone doing it together. If you're a large group, you might break it out into different sizes. But you ask somebody to volunteer to share something about their experience today. But the reality is their sentence has to start with, I learnt, or I enjoyed, or I will. And as soon as you put that condition in place, it really helps people understand, and you understand what has really connected with them today, and generally creates a really nice emotional buzz based on what people have experienced. One other thing I've done, which is a little bit like that, is you ask people to write down something that they have particularly enjoyed from the event, and you get everybody to pop it in a hat. And then you get some volunteers to come to the front, and then you basically read out what people have written. And it creates like a groundswell of positivity and mood that can really help, again, an event or a meeting end on a high and help people see the value that all of us have gotten from that space. So I know I've whistled through that because we could spend 90 minutes on each of these things in their entirety, but hopefully there's a few ideas or thoughts from there of things that you could do that you would do. So let me see how we're doing for time. I'm now going to pause, and you might think, goodness, I'm glad, Jamie, thank you for that. What I would like you to do, so bear in mind, we've just talked about the start, the middle bit, and the final bit. I would like you to spend 2 minutes individually. And again, we're not going to share this. It's for anything you want to write, but I'd like you to have some reflection time of write down one thing that you feel like you could do in your meeting, your workshop, or your event, or whatever you brought today, in the beginning, during, and at the end, that you feel would work for your success factors and for your audience. So we're going to give 2 minutes of just thinking time for this. Again, you can put your screens off if you would like to. You don't want people seeing you kind of squirreling away, that's fine. 2 minutes, one thing that you could do at the start, in the middle, and at the end that would work for your audience and your success factors. Okay, fabulous. I'll invite you all back again, please. And again, you'll appreciate today we're doing everything in fast forward to try and get across as many ideas and activities that we could that you can kind of beg, borrow and steal or even ignore. And so obviously if you're designing this into your own events, you might provide people a little bit more time to really get into this. And so I'm going to now kind of move through a few kind of final kind of points that I think are worth making. So at the start, you remember I told you about today's session was brought to you by the letter C and the number 3 in the style of Big Bird, generally because it's quite difficult to be creative when you've got an entirely blank canvas. And so to a degree, constraints, as it says there, breed creativity, or creativity comes from constraint. And so sometimes you have constraints that you can do nothing about. And so today I talked about some of those I had earlier on, which was I didn't have the time to speak to you guys individually. There was quite a lot of you on a call. And so I have to try and design something and create something around those constraints. And so sometimes the constraints are given to you. So for example, you might get to a place, they have 0 wall space. Well, we'll come on to, you can see some of those there. 0 wall space, no Wi-Fi, a huge group of people, whatever it will be. So some constraints are given to you, and that helps creativity. Sometimes you can just introduce your own constraints. So think about what we've done today. I literally decided the number 3 for no reason other than the number 3. 3 is the magic number, as the song goes. I then tried to think as many ways as possible of how I could use 3 to structure my content today. So most things were sharing 3 activities. Most things were sharing 3 points. Most things were 3 minutes for breakout groups. Because it gives me an option to be creative from a constraint. If you only had 3 PowerPoint slides, what would you actually do? If you only had 3 minutes, what would you prioritize in terms of the conversation? If you've created, how many times have you seen this? We've created 500 post-it notes of great ideas. What about if we all had to collectively decide our best 3 and actually do something about those? So constraints are really great for breeding creativity. Either work within them or find your own and introduce them. Here's another thing. No wall space. You can move tables together. You can create a wall that's flat. You can gather around. You can draw on windows. I tell this to everybody I ever meet anywhere because I got super excited when Leon told me this. Whiteboard markers on windows works really great if you have no wall space. It's a little bit fun. It's a little bit different. I've done that activity with school children before, and you can imagine how enthusiastic they were about doing that particular thing. And even the constraints of analogies that connect with people. So we did the coin thing. The coin is a constraint. I gave you a coin or a coin idea and asked you to create a connection activity. You could literally walk into your stationery room and look at your tables right now and pick up a thing and say, how could I create a connection activity of that? How could I use this to improve what I'm going to do in this session? The analogies, again, we've talked about quite a lot. An analogy, if you really stretch it and push it, can really help your creativity. I'm working in an office right now that has brick wallpaper, and we had Sport England coming for a big visit. And so I literally lifted my head up and thought, how can I use bricks to create? And so what was really helpful is as soon as I thought, well, I'm living in the home of the Accrington Nori brick. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not have. Really, as famous as bricks get. Was used in the building of the Empire State Building and Blackpool Tower and other things like that. And it's really quite famous, at least where I am. And so we use that as humble beginnings can grow really amazing things. And then we started to think about how the bricks, each individual brick, we put a name of our team member on it because our teams were building the foundations of the kind of great buildings of which we were trying to go for. And we just kept pushing the brick analogy, which really forced that creativity. So if you always think of creativity comes from constraint, I can either introduce my own or I can work with what I've got, but it's quite hard to create from a blank canvas. So always try and help yourself out in that regard. Okay. Now I'm going to move us on really quickly into a couple of things. I'm not going to go into this. This is really simple. If you had an ideal toolbox of things that make it easier to be a little bit interactive, the really bog standard list is on your left-hand side. I don't know if you guys have budgets, you can use these kind of things. You might already have these in stationary cupboards. These in the bag are really helpful. You can literally tip up anywhere and do amazing things with that on your left. On the right-hand side are some ideas of things that if you also had, you could do even better things. It's simple. All of this is in the PowerPoint slide stuff. I'm not going to get into it. This resource you're going to get given to you. This is the creative engagement toolkit that I alluded to earlier. There's a link to it here. So literally, if you just would like to look at ideas for activities, this toolkit has a lot of them. It's free. You don't have to register or anything. You can literally click that link and just use it. It has hints and tips, as you can see here, for just kind of how you can make things as engaging as possible. And then what's worth noting is each page is designed to make it as easy as possible for you to use. So for example, in the middle one, a voting grid, it tells you what it's good for, what you need to do, how long it'll take you, things you need to think about, why it's a cool thing to do, and even has hyperlinks to download stuff that you kind of need. And every one of these has a virtual adaptation that you could potentially use online if you wanted to. So I'm going to say nothing more about that other than snap, voting grids, target control, and moments of change are activities that we use time and time again that create really amazing connection and interaction and lead to really amazing insight. And so that exists for you guys. I will share it with you for you to use, adapt, steal, or ignore. Entirely your choice. So, fast-paced, 3-minute, common sense, not common practice. I appreciate you probably thinking, it's already been quite fast-paced, Jamie. So we're going to go faster-paced, common sense, not common practice stuff before we kind of wrap up together. So, PowerPoint, we talked a lot about designing out the barriers, haven't we, all the way through this. So here's some things. PowerPoint, when it's not used well, really disengages people really, really quickly. Is there a better way? Can you draw live on a whiteboard like I did earlier? Can you present it in a different way with a quote or an image? Can you introduce a constraint? I'm only going to allow myself 3 slides, 6 slides, and then focus on what you need to do in that. Can you introduce a holding point that asks people to think? Or on your table, I would love you to debate this idea. Barrier, agendas, a detailed, when you get sent that agenda and you open it, you're like, oh my God, 15 things in an hour. Nothing's going to get solved in that time, but we are going to quickly go through some updates. So rather than an agenda, how about you share some of the outcomes you're aiming for? For the plan for you guys, I don't think I sent an agenda. I basically said, we're generally going to do these things. What about if you only had 3 things? Think about constraints. 3 things that we really need to get into that are going to use the brains of our people. What's a loose plan? I mean, this is a really amazing thing. I've only ever seen it done once. An agenda that was turned into a voting grid on a wall. And as people walked in, they were asked to vote for what they felt was the priority to get into that day. And that informed the order of the discussion. Connection before content, build it in. Even if it's 1 minute, you can do something that helps people. Generally, just careful thought about the first part. Again, not going to go through all of these. Directions, instructions for parking, all of that is removing anxiety of people turning up late, turning up in a way that they're not ready to share and involve. Personal introductions. So you guys didn't know me. Hopefully, if you watched the video, you'd at least seen me. You had a general idea of what the session was going to be about. You potentially were intrigued enough at least to come today. Have smiling team members there. I know it's not nice to say who are the smiley ones among us, but if you just, when it comes to an event, it makes a big difference when you walk in and somebody welcomes you and somebody smiles at you. Background music, offer to make brews, large name stickers we've talked about, all of these things, designing in movement, all of these things are designing out barriers in a way that make it far easier for people to contribute meaningfully. And ultimately, as we started out at the start, that's what our role is. So today, let's get meta. We have achieved this so far. Before, we've already tried out an initial email with a video to set the tone and pose a question. We sent out a bit of a prep pass, so I had an idea of where you guys were at. We gathered insight and some ideas, and your Padlet is absolutely fantastic. The first few minutes, we did an unofficial start. We had some music. I removed the boring slide and used some props to try and deliver the same info. It might not have worked for you, but it is a different way of doing something than a slide because the slide was boring me when I created it. Remember, if it's boring for you, it's boring for your audience, bin it off, do something differently. We did a fun opener. We did a GIF to gauge the mood of what was going on. You connected with each other, connection before content, using a non-scary conversation starter. I love it when they won't move on. Move, move, move. There we go. During, Lots of things happened here. I'm not going to read them out to you. You can read it yourself. Post some questions. Had a break. Use some images. Use some quotes. Had a mix of principles, ideas, activities. Ending. This is really meta now because I haven't even done this bit yet. But we explain what we've done together as a bit of a celebratory recap. We've done a lot together. There's lots of stuff that we've shared. I'm going to ask you to share from today something that's connected with you, but I'm going to do that post-event. And I'm going to be showing some appreciation and gratitude for the time that you've spent today, and I'm going to mean it too. Let's finish with these. If you remember nothing else, we've shared a lot today, and I appreciate we have shared a lot. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Ask yourself, where in my plan have I designed for contribution and not consumption? Keep in mind, design out the barriers before they exist. Do this all the time. So people in the office think you're an absolute nutter when you're thinking about designing something. What am I designing for me that works? What am I designing for my audience? And what barriers can I perceive for them? Have I introduced some connection before content, even if it's really short? Because we know when we've connected once, we're more likely to share again and again. And that's what we're trying to design these things to do. Creativity from constraint. If I'm struggling to think of how to be creative, let's introduce an arbitrary constraint that makes it easy for me. Let's just use a toolkit or something else that people have shared or the Padlet that we've done. Let's look at my desk and pick up a coin and work out what I can do in that space. I only learned this yesterday, literally. So I added this last minute. The forgetting curve is amazing. If you think about a commitment device that I mentioned earlier, what can I do now that locks this in so I'm more likely to use it? The forgetting curve says, when we come to things like this, we leave fully intending to use it. We're excited to use something, whatever that might be. And then if you don't think about it, you're probably not going to use it within 2 days. If you think about it but don't take action, you're probably going to not do anything with it after 4 days. The forgetting curve is really important if you actually want to do something with what you've heard and shared today. So I encourage you to spend some time reflecting and thinking in the next couple of days, and even think about an action that you could take right now, that you could write down right now, that would mean that the forgetting curve is not a reality for you. And so on that, we have the final three. At the end of this today, I would love you to finish the call, and before you go and do anything else, identify one thing that you're going to act on in the next 3 days. Just one thing, even if it's something teeny and something small. What's a commitment device that you can create right now? That would mean more to me than any feedback that you might give afterwards, which might be good, it might be terrible, I have no idea. But if everybody in 3 weeks' time said, I actioned something and it's changed something that I have done, that means more than anything else. So I'm wrapping up now. At the end of this call, when you hang up, write down one thing you're going to act on in the next 3 days. Remember the forgetting curve. What I would love you to do right now, as I say cheerio and thank you, is post a GIF that shares your experience of today, irrespective of what that experience is. I'm always up for developing and knowing more. So if it's been great today, that's a cool GIF. If it's been a lot today, that's a cool GIF. If it's not worked for you today, that's a cool GIF too. Bring it on. In 3 weeks' time, I'm going to spend 3 minutes and ask you for your honest feedback. I'm waiting 3 weeks because in 3 weeks, you should have actioned something. And if you haven't, then I'm going to know whether or not this has made a difference or not. So don't worry about the feedback now. 3 weeks' time, I'm going to ask for something then. I'm going to stop sharing now. I'm going to share a heartfelt thank you using my final board that I'd created earlier. And I'm going to finish exactly on time by asking you to post one thing in the GIF about your experience today. And then please hang up, go and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you so much for giving 90 minutes of your time today. It's really precious and I appreciate you.